I am begging women to stop comparing the cost of childcare directly to their salary. So often when women become new moms, they'll do the math to determine whether or not they can afford childcare. And when they do this math, oftentimes they compare their salary to the cost of childcare. So for example, if the cost of childcare for their children is going to be $40,000 a year and they make $60,000 a year, they say, well, at the end of the day, it doesn't really make sense. My salary barely covers the cost of childcare, and so I'm going to stay home with the kids. And this is very short-term thinking. One, it's short-term thinking because the cost of being out of the workforce, even for a short period of time, is very great. So even if you intend to just take a few years off during those high-cost childcare years, when you try to re-enter the workforce, you often do so at a lower rate, and your career has stagnated quite a bit, and it's very difficult to catch up financially on your retirement, on your benefits, just in your career in general. But this also puts the burden on women. When we frame it as my salary does not cover the cost of childcare, we assume that childcare is the responsibility of the mom and the mom alone. And the way we should really be thinking about it is as a shared expense. Childcare is a shared expense in the same way that the children are both of your children. And so when you look at the cost of childcare, you should be combining your salary, your partner's salary, and then determining whether or not your family can afford childcare in the same way you do for a mortgage. It is not something that just women should be responsible for, but for some reason, we are very comfortable placing this burden solely on moms. And we say if their salary doesn't cover it, it just doesn't make sense. But that's just not how we think about any other expense in our home. Oftentimes when we're being considered for a mortgage with a lender, they're not just saying, Dad, you have to cover this cost by yourself. No, we're looking at the combined incomes and we're looking at the mortgage as a shared expense. And we should be doing the same thing for childcare. And when we think about saving money while the kids are in childcare, we can't just think about what's happening in the short term. You have to think long term. You have to think long-term financial planning, long-term career planning, retirement planning, all of that. It is not as simple as a one-to-one comparison for the 5 years that your kids are going to be in childcare, but it truly has a lifelong impact, specifically on women, because this disproportionately impacts women. Also, I just need to be clear. If you want to stay home with your kids and you want to leave the workforce, that's great if that is the choice that you are making. But when we're talking about whether the math makes sense for somebody to stay at home with the children or to do a nanny or to do daycare, we should not solely be looking at one person's salary, because this is a shared family expense and it should not solely be placed on the woman and on her salary to cover the cost. I think this is because we ultimately view women as being responsible for children in our society. And so we assume you're the mom, therefore it's your job to figure out what happens with the kids.